All right. Hey, blasphemers, hang tight. Anthony Magnabosco is our guest, and we're about to start this show now. Hey, blasphemers, welcome to Simple Blasphemy, where we have the best times with the worst topics.
We're three friends that discuss everything and nothing, from wacky headlines to games and trivia. All subjects bizarre and risque are on the table.
Our weekly guests range from friends, musicians, and artists to professionals in a variety of industries.
We go live on Facebook and YouTube every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Want to support the show? Join our Patreon. You can find it and more at www.simpleblasphemy.com.
So grab a drink and join in!
It's too late now. This is Simple Blasphemy.
All right. Welcome to the Simple Blasphemy podcast, all you blasphemers out there. My name is Zach Ward, and I have here with me always Andy.
Oh, I've got that large cloud of bad stuff happening around my face. I'm Andy, and this
Pure
is
Michigan.
the mold.
Wow, I was not expecting that.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, by the way, is that...
You got some bad mojo, man. Look at
I
that.
know what happened.
Well, we'll dig into that.
Yeah, let's dig into
is
that.
that?
Hang on a second. I think I may have gotten too excited.
Orbs. They're
Sorry.
orbs.
And
Yep,
also,
these are orbs.
Mr. Zach Green.
Cheers.
Really?
Everyone,
Okay. That's
including Andy. That's all I have to say. Anthony, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
All the
Glad to be
info
here.
about this show can be found at simpleblasphemy.com. And if you click that like, share, and subscribe button, you'll win 5 years of what, Andy?
Well, if not 5 years, all your dreams will come true.
Or that Lego set to be
You're going to find it. The castle.
Yeah, Castle Grayskull completely and whatever. As mentioned, before I like to get this right off the beginning, I probably should ask, but Street Epistemology International.org, is that a fair reference for where people can find you?
That's pretty good. I've never done an interview where they've shown that link. That's our newest, that's the new org that we started. But there's more information on streetepistemology.com. But you can get to that one from this site.
Both.
So, thanks for showing the link to that. That's great. Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll do that again. Julio, what's up? He was always in the chat.
He's basically our Ed McMahon by now.
Well, hello, Julio. Nice to have you here again.
So in order to get to know you just a little bit better, and I've seen a lot of interviews just do this, as we call them icebreakers, I guess, but I have 4 questions for you.
Like we really need an icebreaker right now. Come on.
I know. Trust me. I'm trying to like slow down. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
One superpower?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Damn, see, why didn't you send me these in advance?
It's more fun to hear people waffle.
Well, you're watching it right now.
Let's see.
Maybe like a truth teller, being able to tell, see if somebody's actually telling the truth. I think that'd be pretty cool.
I believe T-Jump said absolute knowledge, I think, or something along those lines.
Absolute knowledge. Yeah. Well,
but
I'd rather just like to know if the people that I'm talking to are being straight with me, if they really think what they're actually saying. I think that would be a cool superpower to have.
So like everyone would have a mood ring of some sort.
Yeah, there'd be like a halo, kind of like Andy's that little face thing. Like there's some distortion in their face or something.
I can do it again later on.
With either a check mark or an X.
Yeah.
Just walking around their face.
Yeah. What age do you consider old?
It changes every 10 years.
Yes, it does.
At this moment, 70 is old to me.
Okay. All right.
What do you got? What do you folks think? I'm curious. Probably you're going to say 50 or 60, probably, I'd imagine.
I'm 43, so I definitely will not say that. I would say about the 70, 80 marker for me.
Yeah.
I felt really old at age 14. Like, well, I've already been here too long.
You're aging backwards.
Years of therapy.
Zachuman button. I'm going to go with probably around 80 because my dad's almost 80 and he's still kicking ass up until now. So if I can have that kind of activity that long.
Jesus, that guy's 80?
That dude's going to be, he's going to be 79 in July.
Damn.
So
Wow. What position is that, right? Have you ever been told that you look like somebody? Is there?
Yeah. Somebody said that I look like the defensive coach on some college football team. I don't remember the name. And this was 10 years ago, and the guy probably doesn't even work there anymore.
And he might be old.
Every once in a while. But lately I've heard people say that I sound like somebody, that I sound like Robert Downey Jr.
Oh,
there's a little bit of that in there.
I don't know if that's the case or not. I have to listen to it closely or ask somebody to listen to it. Yeah.
The last question, I'm sure anybody that wants to get to know you better has been wondering for years. What's the worst job you've ever had?
The worst job I've ever had? All my jobs were good in one way or the other, I think. Oh, I was for a short time, I was what was it even? Like a
burlesque dancer.
No, I didn't do that. That was a good job. It was when I was teaching people how to use Microsoft products at like it wasn't a college. It was like, I forget even the name of it, but it was like you go and you just take classes on how to learn some of the latest software. That was tough. That was, yeah, it was really, the people that were there didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there. The workers didn't want to be there. Everyone was sabotaging things and taking each other's lunch. It was horrible. Yeah.
I don't mean to offend or say anything mean, but in other words, you kind of had like the idiot's guide job. Like
yeah,
the book,
I guess so. Yeah. Like I knew Microsoft Office really well, and I was teaching that to people. There were pros and cons to it. You learn how to teach things and listen. And kind of
was it like it was like a production line though. You'd get a group of people in there, you teach them, and then the next dozen would come walking in.
Pretty much, kind of like that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. That was probably the worst job.
That
I was going to say
nightmare.
like working at a fast food joint, but I learned how to be efficient and dealing with the public and that type of thing, and counting money at the drive-through and that type of thing. So. So that was actually good. Yeah, most of my jobs, looking back, were really good, but that one stands out in particular as being really, really bad.
So I've done a kind of a little bit of a deep dive through interviews, and one of the biggest reasons why I reached out to you to come on the show, mainly because it's the COVID thing. You seem to be extremely busy going onto parks or college campuses and interviewing people and probably editing for a very long time. Anthony was raised in a Catholic family around the Chicago, Illinois area, correct?
That's right.
Kind of started. And basically
lifted up on eagle's wings 2 times.
After his formative years, he ended up in Texas. And in 2013, started practicing street epistemology and subsequently founding the Street Epistemology International, which is a new thing. So from this point here, I found Andy while I was searching for knowledge on the YouTube and came across his videos, and he had spoke about a book called A Manual to Create Atheists.
Not my book, by the way.
Not his
yes. There was some confusion earlier.
Yeah,
Did you write that book? No, I haven't written any books yet. But yeah, that was the book that kind of started the whole street epistemology stuff and kind of changed the way that I interact with people about God beliefs and all other types of claims that they make.
Me too. So I want to thank you for that. So to sum up SE, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of discovering reasons why a person believes in a claim. To kind of give like off color, or not off color, but just a kind of an example would be like, this is my rabbit foot and it brings me good luck in my car. So people would have a claim similar to that, or or more robust or not. And basically epistemology, your version of street epistemology, is asking questions to kind of dig as deep as possible to figure out why they hold that belief.
Yeah, pretty much. It's funny you mentioned the rabbit's foot example, because we're writing a course on street epistemology, And one of the examples that we have for one of the modules that will be in the course is where somebody's having a conversation with a bus driver. Now, this might change by the time it comes out, but the bus driver makes a claim that they have a lucky pendant, and then the kid that gets on the bus is learning how to engage with them. So yeah, good example.
So the one thing I'd like to say about this is that it kind of started off slightly in a religious thing, but as you've mentioned numerous times, it can be used in nearly anything, whether it be I've had the opportunity to use it with my children rather than just, quickly lashing out and maybe grounding or whatnot, is basically ask them, why exactly did you do this to your brother or break his Legos or whatever, and really try to get to the bottom of it. And that's why I hold this
interesting usage.
Yeah, well, it does work, and especially with our oldest son, who has some anger issues. It really diffuses any type of outburst, because it makes people think. It makes people, you kind of put them on the spot, and for some kind of like humanistic I don't want to say self-righteous thing, but you kind of got to defend why you do stuff.
I ask my children to qualify all the time. Qualify why you hit your sister.
Well,
give me a good reason.
He's actually going to
they
college.
Ever say it, but I don't know why I did it.
Well, it ends up being different almost every time. Sometimes I get a straightforward answer, and they'll say, well, because she hit me. And from there, it's like, okay, well, now we're looking at escalation. They're going to just keep hitting each other until somebody cries enough to where the other one stops, feels bad, or gets yelled at, to the point of where, okay, Dad's had enough of trying to be even. Stop now.
Yeah. So from 2013, I'm going to kind of set this first question, and I kind of want to get a little bit around SE before we kind of dive into it.
Okay.
You've been doing this since 2013. You got to go on to, even the Atheist Experience and other pretty large broadcast platforms within 4 to 5 years of having been done this, and kind of cannon-bolted in some ways into the limelight, so to speak, in some way, shape, or form. So having said that, this is a prepared question, folks. So I am reading it. Leave me alone. In this crazy internet connected world, I personally have watched hours of your YouTube channel, and it feels like I actually know you as if we've had the pleasure of each other's company. While at the same time, technically, this is the first time we've met. How do you process people knowing much about you when you first meet them, when that is technically your first encounter? Does that happen often?
It happens a little bit. Sometimes, in fact, the video that I'm editing now, that hopefully will be out on Thursday, somebody actually walks up to me they recognized me and they wanted to say hello. So that's a little unusual. It's unusual to experience, but it doesn't happen all that much. Like if I was on the street or going to Lowe's or going shopping or something, buying some plants, I don't
specific.
think I don't. Well, that's all pretty much. It just has my family. That's the only place I go. But it never happens. It doesn't really happen unless I'm in my SE mode or maybe like at a conference or something like that. But like in these situations, like with yourself, if you've been watching my material for a long time, it's a little disconcerting, or maybe it was at first, but now it's like I know the videos are out there. I know people are watching them, and then they're spending varying degrees of time going through that. So plus I also tend to disclose a lot about myself in between these discussions, or you get a sense of like what I like, maybe what I like and don't like. Like I'm a little particular to noises, and like that jarring intro of your podcast. I was like, some of that stuff probably comes through my videos, but I just roll with it. And also like if somebody comes up to me and they say like, I've been watching your videos, I don't really know how long they've been watching it, or maybe they've just watched a couple of them, or maybe they've watched 300 of them. But it's not disconcerting. It's just a little unusual. Yeah.
So a vast majority of people having claims on your channel tend to be either superstitious or religious. When did you kind of break the barrier to where this actually can be applied to political beliefs and things other than that?
It was pretty early on. I was intentionally going out to have talks with people about their God claims and supernatural claims. So when I first started off, I was asking people to talk about why they thought God was real. But it didn't take long before somebody said, well, I don't believe in any gods, but I'd still like to be interviewed. Well, then what do you talk about? And what I was doing is exploring why they didn't believe in God. I was using the same approach to see how they could be so sure that there was no God. And those videos are on my channel. But the supernatural stuff kind of followed, and then the other stuff followed too. Social issues, political issues. It probably, though, was, I would say, to be fair, maybe like a year or two into my discussions, maybe a year, now that I think about it. Like when I first went out, I was really intent on having talks with people about God, but the method is extremely versatile, and it almost does it a disservice if you only explore one topic with it. And it can also get a little boring too, to talk about God, and you hear sort of the same reasons and the same failed attempts to justify why they're so sure that it's true, that it's almost like almost for your mental health to switch topics a little bit. Yeah.
I would like to say too that one of the things I really respected, and I think you were doing more in the earlier videos where you really were not even saying anything about what you believe or what you claim to believe. And many times you just respectfully say, well, we can answer that. We can talk about that at the end of the video. But for now, I don't want to derail your processing. How did you come to even just that? It's like a really big shot of like respect.
Respect in what way?
You're respecting the person that you're having a conversation with.
By focusing on them? Is that what you mean? Yeah, but it's funny because people sometimes would look at my attempt to dissuade them from asking questions about where I stood on their claim as being like holding back or not really revealing. Like, I think people like theists would watch these videos and wonder why I wasn't telling the theist that I was interviewing why I didn't believe in any gods. And to them, that was really important, that you should disclose that. So when I first started off, yes, I would say, oh, can we just wait to the end and I'll answer any question that you have. But these days, I'm comfortable explaining and saying, well, yeah, if you want to know where I stand, I'm at like a 5 out of 100 on that scale of confidence on the same claim. But you have to be careful on how you do that, especially if it's a God belief, because as you probably know, people get worried or they think maybe you're of the devil or you don't have any morals if you don't believe in any God. So that has the potential to make your conversation partner more guarded. But these days I'm fine just saying, yeah, I don't believe that that's true, but I'm really, really interested in exploring how you concluded that it's true. Do you mind if we get back to that?
Yeah. And this is going to be me talking a lot on this one, I guess. But
because you are antsy.
Feel free to jump in.
I am watching you. You're sitting on a bunch of hot nails right now.
I am so excited. It's not even funny.
You got the SE shirt on though.
I do.
Yeah, I love that. Check that out. Woo!
Woo!
So what I'd like to say about that too is
Anthony's shoulder. He's got a sticker.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. And you actually can buy those as well. Evolve Fish is the host of the products, and I got my shirt, I think, in maybe 5 days, and it was really nice. It's supporting people. Well,
as compared to really bad.
I'm still thinking about the hot coals comment. Like,
the worst.
Do I make you nervous or intimidate you or something? I hope not.
No, because I know that this conversation for me could last hours, but I have to condense it into a short time frame.
Okay.
What I'd like to say is one of the most profound phrases that I first heard it from. I'm not going to say that Mr. Matt Dillahunty was the first to say it. Maybe he was, but he makes a claim saying that I want to believe in the most true things as possible and the least false things as possible, or something similar to that. You say a very similar quote too, and my question, and we'll jump into a clip here in a second, but my question to you is, I think anybody would agree with that. It would be hard to say, don't you want to believe in true things and not believe in false things? I find it hard to believe someone would say no to that. Yet on occasion, when you're doing your thing, people have this like weird second guessing your honesty on that. So like, how do you process when you're legitimately, I want to know why you believe this, that people get guarded and say that you're not being truthful?
Yeah. Well, that was kind of perplexing to me to run into people who literally said, it doesn't matter to me if this belief is factually true or not. It's good enough for me to just get value from it and not have to have any justifications for it. It's a shocking thing when you hear it. And sometimes I think the people who say it don't even realize what they've just said. That's why you'll notice a lot of the times in the video, we repeat back what we hear. And I think in one of the videos that you might be queuing up,
sure,
that comes up. The person says initially that she's content believing things that may not necessarily be true. And then by the end of that talk, she came around on it. I don't know. I have a suspicion why people say that is they say that to allow themselves to continue believing things that are important to them, that they do find value in. They don't often hold to that view of it doesn't really matter if I'm believing true things or not for other aspects of their life. They want their kids to believe things that are true. When they go to the bank, they want to have the teller believe things that are true, and the person who's inspecting their car, and so on and so on and so on. But for certain beliefs, they make these exceptions, and that's what we explore in these conversations. Why would you value truth in this instance, but make an exception here? And then you just let them process it. And the fortunate thing is that most people do value truth, even at the expense of their cherished beliefs. But it just takes a while for them to warm up to get used to the implications that recognition has.
And the last thing too, I'd say to that is a stranger is giving an undivided, in-depth attention and honesty and silence when someone's speaking that even sometimes I think friends and families don't do on a daily basis.
There might be something to that. Like there might be a certain advantage to using SE with somebody that you don't know, as opposed to somebody that you do for whatever reason. And it may just be that they feel they have a little bit more leeway to be honest with you as opposed to somebody. It's kind of weird because you think it'd be the opposite. They would be more deceptive with a stranger than they would with somebody that they know and love. It's worth studying. We should probably look into that. Yeah. But we hear a lot of people who say, I'm having trouble using SE with my family or my friends. And these are usually issues that don't normally come up when I'm using the method with strangers. But I have noticed difficulties using it with loved ones. There's something switches. There's something different.
It's kind of like being a therapist and therapeuting the people in your family.
Can't psychoanalyze your wife.
You can't psychoanalyze your wife. You can't do that for anybody because, number one, you're going to be biased because they're your relation, and that person may at the same time look back at you and be like, well, I really, there's things that I don't want you to know about me or that I don't want to mention that might connect me to something else that will come back and haunt me later on. As where a stranger comes up to you, yes, man, I will try the Pepsi or the Coca-Cola. Which one is which?
Right.
It's easy for them to say, well, fuck you. No, I don't like Pepsi at all, because they can walk away and you have no idea who that person was.
Yeah. Maybe there's something about like this, the disposable nature of the interaction perhaps that they're having at the moment that allows them to be a little bit more honest with themselves and with you.
A little more
than
flippant.
They might. Yeah, maybe a little more flippant. There's not as much weight loaded onto it because the repercussions maybe are a little bit less, I suppose.
Or the 4 to 5 minute time limit that you put on the timer too.
Maybe. Yeah.
So let's set up this first clip because some examples are always help. And this is Mariatza.
Yeah. You got it. You said it perfectly. Yeah. So, I've had 2 talks with her.
Now, there is 2 videos. I've watched them both. The first one was really good. The second one I kind of enjoyed a little bit more. This comes from the second one. And folks, if you are watching on YouTube, the Facebook doesn't have it, but the YouTube does have all the clips that we're showing today, the actual episodes. So in the description, you can click on the YouTube links and it'll show you the full episode, of which I'm pulling only a few moments from. Mariatza talks about ghosts and family members that have passed away that are still with her. And that was the topic at the beginning. Now, we're kind of fast forwarding to around the 13-minute marker or so on this. But this is what she has to say after Anthony kind of already started the inquisitive process and started to make her think. So here we go.
Okay, now I see what you're doing.
What am I doing?
So it's mostly like saying that I'm claiming my evidence to be that because I believe in it so much, when in reality the evidence I have is something that you can shift to say it's anything. So it's not really proving it's spirit.
If what you're calling evidence can be used to justify my 90% confidence that leprechauns are real, and it can also be used to confirm that 90% confidence that demons are real, and 90% confidence that spirits of our loved ones are real, what does that say about the quality of your evidence?
Well, that's not a good evidence. It's not. It doesn't have a strong base because it could be used for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So,
I like how open Mariatza is.
Oh, she's great.
She's extremely open. She's probably one of the most open conversation partners I've ever had.
It's hard to have your beliefs put into question by anybody. So
on camera with a complete stranger. Yeah, she was a champ.
Yep.
Can you speak to just that day, and maybe because obviously we're only showing a couple minutes out of at least a 20 or 25-minute video. Is there anything that you recollect from that?
Well, it was hot.
I kind of knew you were going to say that. For whatever reason, I looked at when I was watching the video. I was like, "Man, that looks like a hot."
It was a hot, blazing hot day.
Mariatza was glowing.
Yeah, not much shade. It was probably really hot. I think I probably had one of my AirPods in to broadcast the audio to the Discord server that we have, so there were people listening live when that happened. It was our second conversation, so I was really excited to see her come back. I remember thinking, oh, this is that person that I had that really good first talk with, and they're coming back for a second talk. And I get really excited for multiple talks with the same people, because then you can track to see how they're progressing. So that was exciting. And she was so open, and it was such a great talk the first time around, where we talked about her valuation of truth and does she value it and that type of thing. So she came back and she surfaced this other claim. And it was just an incredible conversation. What else do I remember about that?
Why wasn't there? Do you know why there wasn't a third conversation? Was it COVID?
I never ran into her again. No, I went back to that university for 2 more semesters after that, hoping to have a third chat with her and a few other people, and it just never happened. So
she won the lottery. She moved to Portugal.
I want to tell you guys,
maybe.
Anybody listening to this, his channel is a rabbit hole of just unbelievable conversations. The Mormon ones are always fun, typically because you get them in 2s, right?
Yeah.
It's always interesting, and I love the fact that we kind of steer off to other things. And I'd like to cue up Keith, if you don't mind. Anthony was on a trail, and Keith wanted to talk, and he was a guy that walks by. He says, "Hey, my wife sees you. She thinks you're doing some form of I don't think he said interviews, but it was like
I didn't remember that part of it." Okay, so his wife, did I talk? I can't remember now if I even talked with his wife or something.
He just said that I heard that you're doing surveys, and basically, let's just roll this first. This is a 2-part clip with Keith. Here we go.
When the belief that we examine is very tied to who you are, it makes for a more interesting interview. But we can honestly talk about pretty much any claim. So if there's some belief that you have that you're very passionate about, and you would be a completely different person if you didn't hold the belief. And it's also something that you're very confident is true.
Right.
So those are sort of the parameters.
Okay.
And what do you think? What do you want to chat about?
Let's see here. Voter ID.
Voter ID.
Is that a topic that's been discussed?
I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody about that. And what is your claim about voter ID?
Well, I believe that on voter ID, I believe that there are people that vote fraudulently. Okay, and I can't understand why one particular party, okay, thinks that it's not a good idea, and another particular party thinks that it needs to be an ID furnished.
I got you.
Okay.
If I understand right, your position is that voter fraud is real.
Yes.
And the way to resolve the issue is to issue voter IDs.
Or to provide some kind of identification that validates who you are. Okay. Either driver's license or passport or something that has a picture on it.
Okay.
All right.
One of my older conversation partners. Oh, there's Juggling Lessons. Juggling Lessons has a really good YouTube channel. He does a lot of SE. He does a lot of street epistemology. Make sure you give him a follow.
I will definitely do that. So here's a really great example of something other than supernatural, so to speak. I love the fact that when he said voter fraud, you're like, oh, this is a little breath of fresh air.
Ooh, yeah.
Like,
well, yeah. I was excited because
cakes and pies.
I don't think I've ever done that one. I was probably getting some feedback from viewers to say, "Can you mix it up a little bit? Can you do other topics?" And yeah, so the funny thing that we'll probably get to this, but the technique of SE doesn't really change depending on the topic. You'll notice that I very clearly explained what I was doing. I think I got his consent. Hopefully I did. And then did you notice I did a lot of repeating back?
Yeah. Talk about that real quick.
Yeah. Well, we found that that's really helpful for people to hear what they've just said, because sometimes they didn't mean it, or or you misunderstood. So you could be totally talking past each other if you don't repeat back. So you'll notice a lot in these SE videos, we tend to repeat back what we've heard or ask for clarification. Sometimes we'll define words or ask for a sense of a person's confidence that their claim is true.
It's a core listening. It's a core listening skill, and it also builds rapport with the person you're talking to, and allows them to further
confidence.
Well, no, it allows them to give you more information. Not even subconsciously. If I am talking to you and you're reflecting back to me and giving me the gist of what you're saying, if you're paraphrasing what I'm saying and then getting done with everything that I'm saying, then you summarize and say, okay, so here's what you believe, here's what I'm grokking, etc. This person's gonna be like, yeah, and then they're gonna give you a whole bunch more information.
And you know what I like is when I watch these videos is there's a lot of pausing, even on your part, to where you kind of take a second, you go,
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's really refreshing,
I think
in a world that everybody's arguing.
Everyone's usually talking past each other or waiting for the person to finish, just like I just did there.
Yeah, right.
No, it's my fault. But we should pause more after people say things, because it gives them a chance to correct themselves, maybe think what they just said. Because if you add an extra second to the pause, they may be wondering, well, what did I just say? Why aren't they answering so quickly? So that could be really helpful to add a couple of pauses in there. One thing I've noticed, though, is that I'm a lot more relaxed and calm and allowing those pauses more on the trail as opposed to the campus. I don't know if you've ever, Jack, I know you've watched a lot of my videos, and maybe watch for that. I wonder if you notice some differences in my demeanor. I think I'm a lot more tense and more jumping on things at the campus rather than the trail.
Noisier. And
I would say
it's noisier, yeah.
Noticeably, you will call out the noise that's going to be made, whether it be that thing on the bridge or whatever, whereas it's random on the campus. I would say that was the biggest takeaway from that. But hey, listen, I didn't watch those videos. Never mind. So now the next video, and I want to get to Terry's comment that I haven't put up on the screen yet.
It's a good one.
Terry's comment?
My buddy, yeah, we're going to get Terry's comment after this Keith part 2. So the really neat thing about Keith, two snakes on a plane, is that the one thing I love about your videos is that it does make people think, because there's no attack, and people start getting to be very honest, especially if you're reaffirming and rephrasing things to make sure that you are clear in what they're saying. And again, I urge everybody, you can click the links in the YouTube video to go see the whole episodes. But with this last clip, Keith kind of gave away that he actually, there's some leniency to his, you need voter IDs. So let's just roll this real quick.
People should be able to say, take the right steps in getting an ID, okay?
There's nothing that could...
If you don't have that ID, okay, you sign an affidavit saying that you don't have an ID and you weren't able to go get one. Okay, you sign an affidavit.
At the voting place?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Say that again now? You can actually go to show up at the vote without an ID.
Without an ID.
And then you affirm...
You affirm that you haven't been able to get an ID and you do not have one. And you sign an affidavit and they will allow you to vote.
Oh, okay.
But however, what happens is if they find out that you do have an ID, okay, they can bring charges against you.
Because you would be misrepresenting or lying
Right.
About your situation.
Right.
So, but, okay, so if a person couldn't get an ID, showed up to vote, and affirmed that they just don't have an ID,
Right.
they would be legally allowed to vote.
Correct.
And are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. But at the same time, with the reason I'm okay with that, to me that implies that they are going to verify that that person doesn't have any kind of ID, like versus driver's license, passport, or whatever means they have.
So now I think Keith had to do a little bit of juggling, because I think he caught himself and he didn't want to step away from his initial claim, which he believes everybody should have some form of ID when voting. And before this clip actually got geared up, you did a series of, well, what if they just can't get to, a state place to get an ID? Would that be okay if, you couldn't go? And he was kind of sticking to his guns and saying, no, if you want to vote, you should go that extra mile. And then it turns out in this clip that actually not having a voter ID isn't necessary for him as long as someone says, hey, it's me. What was your takeaway from that day?
It's funny that you selected that as the takeaway, because I guess I never really noticed that maybe he came around a little bit, or maybe softened on his view. The thing that stuck out to me in that exchange, if I remember right, was the reason why he was for voter ID is because somebody had told him,
correct,
that a long time ago, or somebody called him over the phone that this was happening, that people were registering
to a family member. It was a family member.
Was it a family member?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you're more familiar with it than me. But when we explored the quality of that reason, it seemed like that was the thing that that didn't carry as much weight for the opposite perspective. So, like, if the same friend had called him to say that voter ID is not really necessary, he wouldn't have given it as much weight. I thought that was the big takeaway there. But it's kind of funny. Like, sometimes the act of patiently allowing somebody to talk out their position reveals problems and strengths with their position. And they start, the people that you talk to are the ones that are discovering this. And I'm kind of along for the ride. That's what we do in Street Epistemology is to help people feel comfortable to explain their views and their reasoning and how they confirm that that's a good reason. And then it starts dawning on them, like, well, maybe I'm a little bit too firm on this view. Maybe I'm more justified in the view than I originally thought. So that's That was a really good example because it was an unusual claim. I don't usually explore it. And normally, if I had run into somebody, like I think politically, I probably differ greatly from this person. But because I was using this approach of active listening and asking questions, pausing, and allowing him to process his own views, it ended up being a really good talk. And I saw him, if I remember right, I saw him a week later and we waved, and he didn't have time for a second interview, if I recall, but he enjoyed it. He remembered the conversation.
I have to say this. You are the Fred Rodgers of skeptics. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah. You guys, you're not attacking anybody. Yeah.
Go hashtag that. Zach says the Fred Rodgers, which in my opinion is a very, I hold Fred Rodgers in high regard.
As do I.
Let's when you're talking about when you're talking about somebody who's talking, just giving them the stage to allow them to speak. You're basically doing the Napoleon Bonaparte thing where you never interfere with your enemy while they're making a mistake. Even though this person's not your enemy, you're like, just here's the shovel. Go and do your own digging.
I have heard what we do sort of described as that, where you're sort of giving people enough rope to hang themselves. But I hope it's pretty evident that, or at least this is what I strive. I don't want to trap people or to trick people in any way. I do want to be a mirror to what they're saying so that they can hear the words and the justifications that they have for their views so that they can evaluate it later to determine if they're fine with that. So maybe Keith researched voting laws in Texas a little bit further that day, or maybe the next time he decides to share his views on voter ID, that maybe he'll have a more mature view on it because he's processed it more. Maybe he's even come around on it. Maybe he's a little bit more open, or maybe he's a little bit more closed. I don't know. But regardless, it's all growth. If he's spending more time processing it and thinking about it, and maybe thousands of people who have watched the video can also think about it, maybe mimic it to have when they have conversations about voter ID, I think that's good.
I thought about it, and I appreciate it. It's kind of a hot topic at the moment in the older Republican circle. It's kind of voter IDs resurfacing on
big time
social media, and I don't know. It's anyway. I don't even know what to say about that. So let's really quickly pull up Terry's comment here. It says, I suppose the thing about those who don't believe as I do is most feel their belief is enlightened and above mine, so to speak. And Terry, I completely understand what you're saying, because the conversations that people have when they don't engage in this fashion seems like more an attack than what Anthony does, which actually is, it's they're steering the narrative. You're just asking questions. Anyway, it's why I steer away from a lot of people who push flat earth or anti-Christian, because they make me feel like I'm dumb for believing. Can you speak to that from Terry?
Well, it sounds like is Terry a theist? I'm getting the sense that
I think so.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you're getting that impression. I suppose.
Now, this isn't from you.
No, I got that sense. I'd feel terrible if I talked to somebody and they had that impression.
Yeah.
When I have a conversation with somebody, I want them to see me as an equal, whether I believe what they believe or not. And even though some of the beliefs that people hold that I run into, even maybe some of the beliefs that Terry holds, I may think that it's implausible and it's kind of silly to believe it. But I try to see the belief as separate from the person. That this is a person who's just happened to be walking around with a belief that they likely can't justify to themselves or myself. But more importantly, maybe they can't justify it to themselves. And there's value in exploring it to see if maybe one day he'll decide if that's a belief that he wants to continue maintaining. But this message, I guess my message really is less for Terry and maybe more for people who would have engaged with Terry in an aggressive way to leave Terry with that feeling that maybe he isn't smart or he's silly for holding these views. we have to be careful when we're exploring beliefs with people, because if people are left with that feeling, they're likely going to be unwilling to keep exploring the views that they have, at least with you, and maybe even other people. So we have to, as atheists, as people who are having these conversations with believers, specifically in this instance, really ask yourself, what are you hoping to achieve? And what do you want your conversation partner walking away from that talk with? Do you want them thinking, wow, that was an amazing talk that gave me a lot of things to think about, so I'm going to go home and start thinking about it and researching and maybe talking to people in my faith tradition? Or do you want them walking away feeling embarrassed and that they're less in your eyes? You probably don't want that. Most atheists are also humanists. So we have to ask ourselves, is that kind of the impression that we want people walking away from these talks from? And my sense is that if you really think about it, you probably don't want to have a lot of Terrys walking around with that sense, do you?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
We got another question coming in from Julio. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us each and every week. So here we go. Julio says, as an atheist myself, I have had numerous experiences that would qualify as paranormal or solely indicative of a force at work outside of the realm of reality as we know it. Have you had any such experience? And if not, what is your opinion / theory of or behind these occurrences?
To date, I have not had any experience that I would classify as paranormal or anything like that. And if I did, I would imagine that I wouldn't be as quick to call it paranormal or supernatural. I'd be wondering, what the hell was that? I would just sort of be like sitting on the fence. But then again, I haven't experienced it either. So It's kind of hard to say. My sense is that I guess I would probably be wondering about my own senses. Did I misinterpret something? Was I mentally what's the word I'm looking for?
Late onset
compromised. Something was going on maybe in my brain at that moment. So I think I don't think I'd be very quick to say, well, that was a ghost, or that must have been the universe stepping in to correct for some injustice or something like that. It's just not in my nature to go in that direction. So, but here, if I could just say, we have to be careful not to just dismiss people who say that they have these experiences. I think it's really important to acknowledge that something probably happened to them. Mm-hmm. It's the attribution that's in question. It's the answer that they're saying, that they're going with, like, well, that was obviously a spirit, or that was a ghost. Let's hold on a second. Let's figure out, like, that's what's worth exploring in these conversations is the conclusion that you've arrived at.
I've had a couple of those experiences, and I'm not one to believe in that at all. I'm not religious. I don't believe in the ghost or the other worlds or anything like that. And I've seen a couple things. I've experienced a couple things, and I really don't know. I mean, right now, I think about it and I'm like, I have no idea. It's like, am I crazy? Well, maybe not. I don't know. And I have not been able to come up with any conclusions or any beliefs or answer anything. I simply still walk around with the question mark, like, well, I don't know.
I subscribe to there's complete chaos and everybody's fucking wrong.
I have a message that is going to kind of flip the script here, folks. We've been talking a little bit about God and whatnot, and is he or is he not real? And then all of a sudden, Derek shows up and says, Anthony is God. Derek's from Mythvision Podcasts, who we had on.
Derek is that's another great channel right there.
It is. We were fortunate enough to have a great conversation with Derek. Hey, man, cheers to you. And
I think I watched that one. Do you guys have it? Yeah.
Anthony, your name came up a few times in that show by me because I was jealous that he had you on. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to give Anthony an email. So thank you, Derek. So there you go.
We've come full circle. Look at that.
Now, Derek is killing me because he has so many videos he's putting out with like the topics that I want to get to, but I only researched you this week and last week just to prepare for this. So I have a lot of catching up to do, man.
He's prolific.
It is. So enough about him, and let's go back to you.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Actually, he's good. I'm trying to get him in touch with somebody for her show.
Awesome. You know what?
I really like his interview style.
I do too. I'm going to skip over that last clip. There is another clip in the YouTube description that goes a little bit more the religious route, and it had a little bit of I was going to try to show a interlocker that was kind of more on the hard offensive, but rather than that, there's still more questions. And also, those of you in the chat, all of you, if you have a question for Anthony, feel free to let your presence and question be known, and maybe we'll get to that. If there's something you haven't heard him answer in his shows and or interviews. Julio responds back from the initial question we went over. Trust me, I've done a lot of analysis regarding these experiences and not happy with the results, but I've done my very best to be objective. And the one thing that many people, including, not to bring up Dillahunty once again, is that most of us that do a kind and friendly analysis or question to a claim like that, where it's hard to think that it's not a supernatural thing, is that most of all of us will say, we believe that you've experienced this. It's just that the explanation for it, unfortunately, just isn't in front of us, like right in our faces, that we might, and do you get a lot of those things or those sorts of things within like the young people that you interview? Like, what's the difference? I guess this is the question. I apologize. What's the difference between like the younger people that you interview opposed to some of the older ones that you come across? I think the trail, you tend to get a little bit of an older crowd, but yeah, of course, the colleges, it's a little bit younger. Yeah,
college is a little bit younger, although there are some older people that walk the campuses too, teachers and police officers. I actually interviewed a security guard there, but he didn't want me to put the video on the channel. There's not really much of a difference between the older and the younger. The younger people may be a little bit more comfortable being recorded. Maybe not quite as thought out of their reasons, and maybe a little bit more of on the spot reasoning as opposed to maybe an older person, possibly. But the quality of the reasons that people give for their supernatural beliefs, or the quality of the evidence that they're using, or the attribution, the conclusion that they're arriving at, it's pretty much all the same. It doesn't really matter how old you are. But there might be an advantage of younger people processing and thinking about these questions maybe earlier, maybe before their brains are. Does that happen? Do our brains get more rigid as we age? I'm not exactly sure. I've talked to a lot of older people who, it's funny, on the trail, I've run into a lot of older people who seem to be going there to think about things. They're reflecting on their lives. Yeah. And it could be a really good moment to run into them at that time.
That's my hot tub every night.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Green.
Do you look back at the stars? Because that's what I do.
Oh, I do everything. I think about everything. I think about my own reasoning, just like what I'm doing. Like, am I looking at something wrong? Like, I just don't zero in on the world and everything that's wrong with the world. I also reflect on like, well, maybe I'm not seeing it correctly. So I mean, I at least an hour and a half every night. And it's refreshing, man. Tomorrow. It's my saving grace.
There's on the subject of the religion thing. We've talked about it a few times. In fact, when we started this podcast 3 years ago, I was even talking to Andy. We had like the simple blasphemy, trying to make a lighter side of blasphemy, or what would be considered blasphemy in the Bible. And I was actually I wanted to start getting a little more active and maybe do a little audio activism. And then Andy and I and Zach kind of just decided that we're going to keep it the lighthearted thing and never really dove into it literally until the last couple months with T-Jump. one of my favorite people, and Derek, of course.
As long as Ward lets us have dick and fart jokes every once in a while, we're happy.
We're happy.
He feeds the animals. He lets them be assholes for a little bit. Maybe Zach Green screams a little bit. Maybe Andy goes on a tangent.
I don't want to scream
serious the rest of the time.
And I just want to read this really quick. According to the 2019 Pew Research Survey, a quarter of the U.S. population today says that they have no religious affiliation. Folks, if you literally went back in time, not even 10, 20 years, that number would not be where it is today.
You go back farther, they light you on fire.
And if you're watching this and you are religious, you can blame this man. Anthony is making people really dive into their core beliefs. How has that affected you, and why did you decide to, like, instead of doing it just for yourself, going out to the public and having these respectful conversations?
Damn. Oh, I wish I could take credit for like all of that or some of that, maybe a little bit of it, but that does seem to be where the trend is going. Whether I was out there with my camera or not, or uploading videos, the trend probably would have been heading that way. There's so many people doing good things. You mentioned a couple names earlier, Matt Dillahunty, Derek with Mythvision. We've got people watching, juggling lessons, your show, even, you're putting out content that are causing people to think and take another look at their views. And that's what I do on my channel. I just go out and ask people to surface a claim. It's usually a religious claim, and we explore it. And then I put the video on the channel because there's a number of reasons why I put the video online, because I want to get feedback from people so I can improve. I want to teach people how to do this. I want people to observe and say, I could do that. I've just anticipated the next three questions that dude was going to ask. I could easily do that the next time I hear a claim. Good. That's what I want. I want you to learn this and mimic and improve on it. Why do I do it? Because you can obviously see the harm that walking around with beliefs that you can't justify to yourself can cause on society. And the God beliefs fit that category. People cannot back them up. They're fucking up this country. They're fucking up the world. And there's no better use of my time than to give people the tools to engage with folks who are making these claims, and teach them how to use it so that they can use it on us for the claims that we make. Because we don't have the truth either. Probably not. We're probably mistaken on a lot of things. So that's ultimately. Yeah, I mean, look at Zach. He's, you're in your hot tub an hour and a half every night trying to figure shit out. I love that. That's awesome.
Anthony, I have a really great question that you've spoken that you have a partner, you have someone that you're married to, and you have children. What is your family's opinion on you being this content creator / street epistemologist?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them. My kids are, I think my kids are, I think it's kind of cool that you've got a YouTube channel. Like they say, my dad's a YouTuber. Like that's a really big deal. But maybe the shine of that's wearing off a little bit. There's maybe more of an interest in TikTok and other venues. It's like maybe not as cool to be a YouTuber. I don't even think I'm a YouTuber. I put my shit on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm not really, I don't follow the stats or anything like that. I think my spouse maybe was a little worried about what I was doing at first, especially earlier on. If you've watched some of the earlier stuff, you know that I was arguing and yelling with street preachers. So when I first went out, I was a little aggressive.
A little aggressive at first.
Yeah, just a little. This is a little known fact. My wife insisted. I think she watched a couple of my earlier videos, and she said, "You need some security out there when you do this, or you're not doing it." So I literally hired somebody to sit off to the distance, and as I was engaging with these street preachers, and they were coming up to me, and I actually, in retrospect, it probably wasn't a bad idea, because I was being a jerk to them, and they were.
You're being aggressive.
I was aggressive. I was aggressive with them, and they were giving it back to me. There's no doubt about that. But she was worried about that. And then I think once she once I realized and other people in my family started realizing that, no, these are really good, powerful, they're becoming good, powerful, loving conversations that are really productive, where people are enjoying that and learning from it. And it's really, there's something positive to this. Then I think the worries fell away and there's more encouragement and support.
The bodyguard lost his job.
Yeah. And you're not a job creator. Sorry, Anthony.
Peace lover. Peace
I would like to say that anybody that hasn't dove into Anthony's channel, which you can just search on YouTube his name, which is there on the screen, of course, is that there is a progression. I mean, you can literally grow with Anthony if you dive back into the early videos, and it's actually a learning tool. There's a lot of time involved in that, and I'm guilty of that, but there's a lot of learning that you can see the progression of how approaching the way that from the beginning. Yeah, you were kind of throwing daggers at each other up until recently. There was a video with a young lady. It's slipping me at the moment, but you basically were asking somebody like, "Hey, I'm videotaping," like clicking, and then she just
like, shut up. We're doing.
Yeah,
I'm doing
this. That. I seen that one.
Yeah.
But there's a big but there. There's a big but there. You handled that better than almost anybody because you still gave her the platform to talk without ever defending. You never defended your position.
Right. I didn't become defensive or I honestly, I explained why for anyone that doesn't know, I was interviewing this person and we were talking about a fantastic subject. We were talking about epistemic justice and is narrative on equal footing as the truth? And I've been wanting to have this conversation because I hear everyone talking about this thing. And in Texas, I just wasn't seeing it. And finally, I don't know if this is good or bad, but finally in Texas, I was having this discussion. And there were some people off to the side. And as you know, I'm very particular about noises and that type of thing and the production quality of these wonderful conversations that I'm having. And without thinking, I was just like, shut up. I was trying to get their attention and my interviewee just was not having it. They were very upset with it. And they called me out on it. But yes, I didn't get defensive. I heard them out. I think there were even maybe a couple seconds where I was just like, okay, so where would you like to pick this up? Where do we want to go? Do we want to talk more about the incident or do we want to get back to the topic? I'm willing to go wherever you want to go. And that is something that I never would have done 5 years ago. I would have become defensive and I probably would have ended the interview and it probably would have been really ugly. Now, these days, I probably won't be snapping at people. So it's this growth. It's this whole thing of growth as you do this more and more. But yeah, that was. It's funny. I actually thought about editing that out because I thought like that's going to detract from this really big conversation that we had, and I was like, well, no, that really needs to stay in there.
Added.
The way you reeled it back in and then explained.
I was really impressed.
But you got it back on track of the topic
with letting that person still steer the conversation.
I can't even begin. I wish there was a button I could press just to let you know how much I've learned from your videos and how much respect I have for at least what you do on YouTube. I don't know what you do at home, but on YouTube, it's awesome. Is it okay to ask just a few more questions? Do you have enough time?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm really enjoying it. So the harder the questions you have, the better. So whatever you want to ask me.
So here's another one here. And this kind of goes along a little bit with what we're talking about. When you start to seek truth and you attempt to view the world outside of the box or people are in their echo chamber, so to speak, what beliefs did you have that you may have changed? For me, a big one was after becoming a non-believer and really looking at humanity and becoming the best humanist I can be. I've personally realized that country borders should not be what people think they are. We are, not to steal this from a religion, but we are created equal, believe it or not, folks. And if somebody in another country wants to come into this one, in my changed opinion, and I'm not saying I'm right and everyone else is wrong, but what I believe is anybody should go anywhere they want to go on this marble, personally. Whereas years ago, I would have been, yeah, put walls up. Why would we want the really nice Canadians coming here or the evil, south of the border, which I all think is baloney? Was there any views that you held dear that through this process you really did change? Hold a second, your audio just cut out.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. I did that. I accidentally. There were a few. Regarding the God claim, I thought people who studied this stuff and were really, like, if you were a priest or you were an apologist, that you could adequately defend your view. That's not the case. So that was kind of a shock. Like, I thought, well, maybe the everyday person on the street might struggle to answer some of these questions, but like somebody who's a studied theist or apologist, maybe they'd be able to back it up. But that's not the case. I've changed my views on guns. I've talked about that on other interviews, though, so I don't really want to get into that. But I'm a little bit more open to the idea of people walking around with guns because they're out there. And that's kind of a shocking thing to say, especially in light of the shooting that we just had. But if there was somebody there with a gun, maybe they could responded quicker. I've changed maybe a little bit on voting. Like, I think maybe 2-3 years ago, I would have said it's a bad idea to require any ID whatsoever. I think it's probably a good idea to have identification because you can see what happened when the populace gets scared and think that there's not this rigid system in place. Everything could possibly topple. So maybe to appease certain people, a certain
security.
Like maybe there's something to that. As long as we can make it easy to get an ID and give people some sort of way of verifying that who they are. So yeah, I've changed on some of my views. Yeah, but broadly speaking, you start to realize that we're all sort of forming beliefs as we go. We don't really spend a lot of time processing, like, unless you're sitting in your hot tub looking at the stars, like we tend to do. Most people are just forming the beliefs and then acting out on them, and they don't often reflect on why they have that view in the first place, and do I have good reasons for thinking that that's true? That was a real shocker, and that was a humbling thing. That was a big learning moment for me. It was a big learning moment for me that most of us are just kind of running around and acting out on these views, and nobody's challenging us on it, really. Maybe you were challenged as a kid, but when you get older, who's challenging your deeply held beliefs these days, unless you happen to run into somebody who maybe knows this method? It's not happening all that much.
But does anybody, I guess maybe I'm in a different school here. Why does anybody care that much?
I was thinking about this the other day, just yesterday, maybe it's even today. I almost tweeted this today. Do you care if other people are walking around with the same time, that we're all in the same time zone? That it's like, it's 9 o'clock for me, and we're roughly, and my son who's in the other room also is agreeing that it's 9 o'clock. There's a benefit to being on the same page with the beliefs that we have. And if you don't care what anyone thinks, like I would care if my son really thought it was 9 o'clock in the morning as opposed to 9 o'clock in the evening. We do care what other people believe because we're interacting with them all the time. So I think there's value in pushing back on the views, and we have an effective way of doing it really respectfully with the street epistemology approach. So you can interrogate respectfully the claims that people are making, with the idea perhaps that, back to the Matt Dillahunty quote, or this idea of wanting to believe things that are true because we're acting out on them.
So yeah, we have a Zach Green. Any thoughts? Green, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah,
I've got two quick questions after you guys are done.
I just want to see a lot less in this world, and it's basically what everybody's doing today is they're just fucking screaming their fucking argument. Like basically, like, I'm right and you're fucking wrong.
Yeah,
plug in
like echo chambers and stuff. Where, like,
I know
that is not the way. Like, just like we need to practice the pause and, like, well, let me Let me think
Maybe
about
that's
where
why
you're
I don't care.
coming from. Let me put myself in that position.
Let me tell you,
more people should think like, well, maybe I am wrong. Let me rethink this. It just no. Everybody's like, blah, 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 and nothing ever gets done.
yeah, people, right. Here's the dilemma that I think that we're at right now is that we've demonstrated with SE that you can explore voter identification or God beliefs or any other claim respectfully in a one-on-one, maybe a two-on-one. I have one conversation where there's four Christians and they walk up to me and one of them's recording with his phone. They've been watching my videos and they're like, it's this big gotcha situation that turns into this really good talk. But where was I going with that? I can't remember what I was about to say. Gosh, it sucks getting old.
I'm sorry. It's probably my outburst of screaming. I know you don't like loud noises.
Yeah. I hate when that happens.
My bad.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Totally Trojan horse Anthony Magnabosco.
Anthony, Andy,
I got
do
to
you have
stop
any?
drinking beer.
Andy, do you have anything you'd like to ask or add?
No, it's been absolutely fascinating. It's cognitive behavioral on a completely different level. It's making.
I did remember what I was going to say.
Sure,
if you'll allow me,
please. Oh yeah.
We need to shift from having these intimate one-on-one conversations and broadening it out and trying to work it into the culture, so that what Zach's observed, where we're yelling at each other and we're fighting to show the worst example on the other side. We need people who are influential to start grasping these tools and demonstrating how to use it on a broader level and working it into politics and business and academia. Because what's the option? We have to be talking to each other and working these things out, but not just agreeing to disagree, but pushing back and holding ourselves to a higher standard because we do act out on the beliefs that we hold. And that's the next stage of this, is getting more people to use it beyond just one-on-one, these one-off conversations. We need a bigger punch, so to speak, with this approach.
Is that why you kind of did the international, like the Street Epistemology? Okay, is that where that's coming from?
Yeah, this isn't a U.S. thing. This is a problem that faces humanity. So we started the nonprofit organization to develop tools, foreign language translated and that type of thing. There's the URL. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So Street Epistemology International.org. Anthony does have also a couple Facebook pages. There's actually one if you kind of want to be behind the scenes learning how to do it, or there's a small, not even a small, but there's a community there that you can ask questions, which I haven't asked any questions yet, but I enjoy the news feed. I got two more questions. One is extremely short, but let's go with the longer one first.
Okay.
Many atheists really like to quote the Bible verses and against believers. You'll often see someone will say, "My God is an awesome God," and then you'll have somebody say, "I did not come here to bring peace, but I come here to bring the sword." Right? This can be viewed as an attack. Street epistemology seems to take the fight out of the conversation. Can SE work for finding food with my wife? She's the girl that can eat just about anything, but after 4 or 5 suggestions, still cannot decide. This is controversial. Is this muddy waters, or can we really get to the bottom of it?
Was this the easy question or the hard one? Because I think this is actually it is a hard one because there's more to it, and it's not just how do I figure out what my wife wants to eat for dinner tonight or that type of thing. Because when we're using street epistemology, typically it's after somebody has concluded something is true. They've already made their decision. So your question actually got me wondering about, is forming a decision the same thing as forming a belief? Maybe. I'm thinking maybe there's some similarities there, but there might be some subtle differences. But typically when we're doing SE, it's the reverse. We encounter somebody who's made the decision, this is the best restaurant for us to go to tonight. And then we ask our questions to see how they concluded that it's true. But I do think you can probably use it to work to back into a decision, basically, or to back into a belief. In fact, your question reminded me of this talk that I had with two ladies Noella and Hafsa. You probably remember we were talking about parentage, and we started off. I think one of them said she was 100% sure that the woman who says is her mom, and we street epistemologized that claim, and she ended up backing off of her certainty just a little smidge. But at the end of the conversation, they were wondering if they could use the approach that we just used to help one of them figure out what was the best thing for her to study. What does she want to get a career in? Which is very similar to what you were saying. Like, what is the best restaurant to go to? What is the best career for me to go? Where should I move? You might actually be able to use some of these techniques to get to those conclusions. But it could be a unique twist on SE, couldn't it? If there was maybe some discussions about that.
So Julio says Anthony's starting to sound more and more like a human Yoda.
I like.
I like. So this is my last question of the night, and I really want to say this is a really short question. Anthony, I really appreciate and you've inspired all of us to reconsider a more humanist approach to conversation. I can't even say thank you enough. There's few people that you get a chance to research and that literally is a chapter changer. It's like, okay, my chapter is over with this version of Zach, and this chapter is a new one. Am I better at conversations now? Yes. Could I be better? Absolutely. In the future, with you having street epistemology always in the back of my head. And I hope that one day I would like to personally go out and do exactly what you do. I take that back. I have two quick questions then. The first one that is a yes or no answer is Anthony has 3 puzzle pieces that in many ways allows his interlocutor to remember the conversation, but also come back at least 2 more times to complete the full circle. Do you sell those for other people that want to mimic what you're doing?
I don't sell them. You can find them online. But
okay.
I've thought about maybe buying a whole bunch in bulk, maybe with the logo on it or some words on it or something like that. You can find them. Just search for Gear Stress Ball, and you'll probably find a couple of websites that sell them. Yeah.
But if people want to,
you don't even have to offer that. Like, if you can come up with something to incentivize people to come back for other talks, but that was something that's lightweight and it's colorful and there's 3 and it kind of, the gears, you get the gears going.
Interlocks.
Interlocutor.
Yeah. So this is my last question. Often there's always a battle from east to west. Who has the best hot dogs or whatever that is? You hail from Chicago, Illinois, and now you are in Texas. Who has the best pizza, Chicago or Texas?
Oh, there's no question. It's Chicago pizza. Yeah, there's no question. Yeah.
All right. Well, I've never seen anything that you've been.
What about barbecue?
Talk to that was that like duh of a moment. And I'm not even going to spare you the embarrassment of myself saying why is that or to go down that route.
How confident are you that?
Yeah. Okay. On the scale of how many slices are you confident? Other than that, hey, Anthony, it's been nothing but a pleasure.
Same.
Thank you.
Really,
so
it's
much.
Nice to meet you both. Meet all of you, not just you both.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to going through the rest of your videos.
So let's just do a couple call outs really quick with the Mythvision podcast. Juggling lessons, of course. I'll be subscribing here and I'll go down that rabbit hole. Also T-Jump and also the Atheist Experience podcast / video. All those guys, awesome content and amazing. And please consider subscribing to Anthony's channel and checking out his videos and all that. Even though we're kind of in the midst of this COVID weirdness, I'm assuming this will pick right back up, hopefully in the fall, at worst case scenario. So you can Google search or YouTube search rather, Anthony Magnabosco, and he pops right up. Other than that, thanks you so much, Anthony. We're going to roll out a little closing. If you could just hang tight for just 1 second, and we will see you next week, folks. Have a great weekend.
I got to pee. I'll be back.